In 1975, a 24-year-old engineer at Kodak named Steve Sasson wired together a contraption the size of a toaster out of spare lab parts and took a photograph that needed 23 seconds to record onto a cassette tape and looked, when it finally appeared on a television screen, like a blurry black and white smear. It was the first digital camera ever built. It was also, though nobody in that room understood it yet, the murder weapon. The company that invented digital photography that held the original patent on it was Kodak, and digital photography would go on to erase Kodak almost entirely from the earth. 37 years later, the giant that had owned the photograph for a century filed for bankruptcy, killed by the exact technology it had invented and then deliberately chosen to bury. Before this is over, you are going to see the actual machine that ended Kodak, built by Kodak, a full decade before most people had ever heard the word digital. You are going to see why a room full of intelligent executives looked at the future of their entire industry and decided, on purpose, to lock it in a drawer. And you are going to watch a company worth $31 billion, employing 145,000 people, dissolve into bankruptcy, not because it was stupid, but because it was behaving completely rationally. That last part is the whole lesson, so hold on to it. Kodak's fatal mistake was not blindness, it was something far more dangerous. To understand the fall, you have to understand how total the empire was. Kodak was founded in 1888 by George Eastman, a man who turned photography from a chemical art practiced by specialists into something anyone could do. His promise was a single famous sentence: "You press the button, we do the rest." And for the better part of a century, the world did exactly that. By its peak, Kodak controlled around 90% of the films sold in the United States and about 85% of the cameras. The phrase "a Kodak moment" entered the language as a synonym for memory itself. But the genius of the business was never really the camera, it was the film. Kodak sold cameras cheaply, almost as an afterthought, because the camera was just the razor. The film and the chemicals and the paper and the developing, those were the blades bought over and over forever at enormous profit margins. Kodak didn't sell you a device, it sold you a lifelong subscription to your own memories, which is exactly why what happened in 1975 was so dangerous to them. Steve Sasson's digital camera captured a black and white image at a resolution of 100 by 100 pixels, roughly 1/100th of a megapixel, and stored it not on film, but on a cassette. It was slow, crude, and visionary. Sasson took it to Kodak's management and showed them a photograph that used no film, no chemicals, no paper, and no developing whatsoever. He later recalled the reaction in a single, devastating line. They were interested, he said, but they told him it was cute, and to please not tell anyone about it. Kodak patented the technology in 1978, then set it aside. And here is the part people get wrong. They did not simply fail to see digital coming, they saw it perfectly, they held it in their hands. The problem was that everything they saw, they understood as a threat. Put yourself in that boardroom, and the decision stops looking stupid and starts looking almost inevitable. A digital photograph uses no film. It uses no developing chemicals, no photo paper, no trip to the drugstore. In other words, the entire digital future erased in one stroke every single product that made Kodak the most profitable consumer company in America. To embrace digital was to take the most lucrative business model of the 20th century and personally set it on fire in exchange for a worse-looking image and no obvious way to make money. Every quarter, every earnings call, every bonus structure screamed the same thing: protect the film. So they did. They treated their own invention as a weapon to be contained rather than a future to be built. And for almost 20 years, because they were so dominant, it even worked. But you cannot patent your way out of physics. The technology Kodak had invented kept getting better whether Kodak sold it or not. And by the late 1990s, everyone else, Sony, Canon, Nikon, was selling digital cameras the public actually wanted. Kodak, to its credit, did not sit completely still. It built digital cameras, and for a brief moment in the mid-2000s, it even led the American market in digital camera sales. But it was a trap dressed as a comeback. Every digital camera Kodak sold replaced a film customer who used to be worth thousands of dollars in repeat purchases with a one-time buyer who would never need a roll of film again. Kodak was, in effect, paying to demolish its own cash machine. And then came the final blow that finished dedicated cameras altogether. In 2007, the smartphone put a free digital camera in every pocket on Earth. The numbers came apart with breathtaking speed. Film, which had been the most reliable money-printing operation in American business, simply evaporated as the world stopped buying it. The stock that had traded around $90 a share in 1997 slid toward pennies. The workforce of 145,000 was cut and cut and cut again. On January 19, 2012, Eastman Kodak, one of the most valuable and admired companies of the 20th century, the inventor of the very technology reshaping the world, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It survived in a shrunken form by selling off its enormous portfolio of patents, including, with almost unbearable irony, many of its foundational patents on digital imaging. The company that invented the future ended up auctioning it to the companies that had used it to win. It is tempting to call this a failure of vision, but that explanation is not just wrong, it is backwards. Kodak had more vision than anyone. It saw the future a decade early and held the patent on it. The thing that killed Kodak was not a lack of foresight. It was an excess of incentives. This is the trap that researchers later named the innovator's dilemma. A dominant company is not destroyed by failing to see the disruption coming. It is destroyed by 1,000 individually reasonable decisions to protect the profitable thing it already has. Every manager who chose film over digital was, in the short term, completely correct. The film business was real, enormous, and immediately profitable. The digital business was small, unproven, and actively harmful to that profit. So the rational choice made again and again, year after year, by smart people doing their jobs well, was to defend the past. And the sum of all those rational choices was a corpse. Kodak did not die because it was foolish. It died because it was logical about the wrong thing. So here is the lesson, and it is a much more uncomfortable one than don't miss the future. Almost any company can be talked into protecting a business that is making money right now. That is the easy, defensible, promotable decision. The real question, the one that almost no successful organization can answer honestly, is darker. If there is a technology that will eventually destroy your most profitable product, would you rather build it yourself and bleed for years while it matures, or let a competitor build it and bury you all at once? Kodak knew the answer for almost 40 years. It simply could not bring itself to act on it. Kodak invented a real, world-changing technology and was destroyed by its own refusal to use it. There is, strangely, an exact opposite version of this story, a company that invented no working technology at all, that had nothing in the lab and nothing in the patent drawer, and yet convinced the smartest investors in the world that it had rebuilt medicine from the ground up. One company buried a miracle, the other faked one. That story is already on the channel, and the link is on the screen.